the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, one of the great Jewish thinkers, Jewish philosophers, Jewish Kabbalists, and ultimately Jewish leaders. Although there was controversy directed to him in his lifetime from some contemporaries, there was some confusion, there was many issues as a result of Shabtai Tzvi, and people that held on to that unfortunate, wrong, and damaging approach that he introduced, very mistaken. He was a false Mashiach. He had followers that didn't want to let go of their faith and belief in him, even after he converted to, I believe, Islam. And it is a very hard point, a very difficult point in the Jewish story was this whole idea of the damage caused by the false Mashiach Shabtai Tzvi. And there were suspicions of rabbis being secretly devoted to him and still following him and not showing it, trying to hide it. And so because of this, there was a lot of issues with a lot of kosher rabbis. One of the most famous is the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. We see now, obviously, that it was a mistake, a tremendous mistake. He was holy and kadosh, which means holy, actually. He was one of the greatest of our later rabbis in all areas of Jewish thought. Again, philosophy, Kabbalah, halacha, everything. But because of this concern that one of the rabbis of his time had, that maybe he was hiding the fact that he's still following and believing in Shabtai Tzvi, so he got criticized and censored a lot. His Kabbalistic books or manuscripts, of course, at the time were censored. He was forced by the people of his community, the leaders, the Beit Din. Perhaps, I'm giving you a general breakdown. I don't know this in depth either. If you want a full discussion, you have two options. Look, find the research, find the books to discuss it, or ask Rabbi Breitowitz. That's your two options. But basically, this is the gist of it. And because of this unfortunate backdrop of the after effects of dealing with, recovering and moving forward past this difficult, dark story in the Jewish history of Shabtai Tzvi, he was suspected of this, and there was controversy around him. He even censored his books at the time and his ability to teach and learn Kabbalah. But later on, after his life, so his Kabbalistic books have spread. Today they're available in all the bookstores. And an important thing was the Vilna Gaon, who obviously came later. He was later, and he kind of gives the Ramchal his stamp of approval, which, again, being perhaps arguably one of the, if not the greatest rabbi that the Ashkenaz world has seen in the past 500 years, the Vilna Gaon. So his stamp of approval is you can't get a better stamp of approval than that. I think better than the Gra saying that he's not only kosher, but he was of such a stature and a level of holiness and Torah knowledge that the Gra says he would have walked from where he lived to where the Ramchal lived to learn Torah from him. And so that's an amazing praise and an amazing vindication for any of this unfortunate suspicion that surrounded him. And this is, again, one of the greatest sages in the past 500 years. The Hasidic approach to the Ramchal, honestly, in my opinion, is no different. They held of the Ramchal. He was a Kabbalist, and he was a genius. Now, there are some writings of the Ramchal where he discusses with his own personal revelations that he experienced, Ruach HaKodesh, which is the highest level of divine communication that one can possibly receive in this day and age. You'd have to be a perfect tzaddik to receive this divine communication. It's called Ruach HaKodesh, the divine spirit. It's accepted that we have rabbis even until today that they do reach this level. For example, the most clear indication of a rabbi that reached this level of Ruach HaKodesh, divine communication in its strongest possibilities today without nevuah, without prophecy, is the Arizal, for example, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, Isaac Luria. He lived in the 1500s, and the clear stories and eyewitness testimonies to his greatness prove beyond any doubt whatsoever that things were revealed to him, things that were happening in heaven, things about the secrets of a person's soul. He knew almost everything. I mean, from our perspective, he just knew everything. Anything he wanted to know, he could know, because he was a unique soul that came into the world and just had this unbelievable Ruach HaKodesh. His teachings are novel and create a new level of understanding of Kabbalistic knowledge that predates him, meaning he came in and revolutionized the learning of Kabbalah. And today, learning Kabbalah really means following his views and his innovations into how we study Kabbalah, which happened in the 1500s. The Ramchal in the 1600s, in his writings, it indicates that he reached levels similar to the Arizal, the levels similar. And in that time, and especially after Shabtai Tzvi, it was a bit radical to hear that, to see that from a living person, and people were afraid. And at the same time, with this other rabbi suspecting him of perhaps being even connected with Shabtai Tzvi, so they felt that this was maybe too much. It was too much, and they censored him. But that's part of it, is that he did say that he reached very high levels, and he wrote a continuation, so to speak, of the Zohar, like a Zohar Tinyana, a continuation of Zohar. Really, yes, really means that you're putting yourself on an extremely high level, equating what you write and say to the Tanaim, on some level. And again, this was part of what was maybe created some issues. Today, I guess his approach in that particular part of what he taught, of him representing a revelation that would be similar to the Arizal, and the idea of a continuation of the Zohar. So even though he says it, and I don't think we have to say that we don't believe it, or we do believe it, but it isn't accepted. That's the best way to put it. It didn't become part of mainstream Jewish thought, and it didn't become accepted in the fold of Judaism. I mean, it's not a standard idea that everyone accepts. For example, and this is something very important to distinguish and to differentiate, is this. There are rabbis today, for example, like Rav Yaakov Hillel, one of the great Kabbalists and Gedolei Yisrael today that are alive. I had the privilege of learning in one of his classes, not one of his Kabbalistic classes, but one of his classes, which was very deep, different mysticism and all that, but not his Kabbalah classes are reserved for very big, famous, or very accomplished Jerusalem rabbis, which, because really the main reason I was a Baal Tshuva, and he doesn't accept Baal Tshuvas in his Kabbalah classes. That was really the reason why it never happened. But anyway, his opinion, for example, and other rabbis like him, is that someone who would reject the Arizal today, meaning post, now that we know everything and everything's been recorded, it would be very similar to a heretic. I wouldn't want to call him an absolute heretic, but he puts himself close to and in the category of a heretic, or idea of rejecting the accepted Jewish reality, the Torah, Shebaal Peh, and the accepted opinion of hundreds and hundreds, and add thousands of rabbis that accepted the Arizal as truly a revelation of new chidushim straight from Eliyahu Hanavi, in a sense, a continuation of the Zohar, an authenticated and validated extension and continuation of Zohar, which you can't get any deeper than that. And so since it was accepted by, for example, rabbis like the Vilna Gaon, like rabbis like the Ben Ish Chai, like rabbis, you name it, the Hasidic masters, everyone has accepted the Arizal as authentic. And so once that has happened, someone to reject the Arizal would really be putting himself as close as you can to becoming a heretic, to being classified as a heretic, someone who rejects the truth of Torah. Now, the Ramchal introduces similar ideas about himself in his writings, and again, he was holy, he was righteous, he was humble, he was everything. And we don't have to say that he was, God forbid, wrong or anything like that. He could be correct, he could be true, everything. It should all be true. All of these great men, these people that were above lying and above being haughty and taking pride for themselves, we assume they all spoke only truth. But it could be a limited level of truth. It could be a certain revelation that Hashem wanted for him, and we see through divine providence, it did not become part of the standard Jewish story. And since it didn't, so everyone's not obligated to believe that. Meaning, if you don't believe the Ramchal is like the Arizal, so you're not doing anything wrong. You're not guilty of any crime in Judaism. I mean, maybe in a more subtle sense, you might be. Maybe just in the fact that he's a dependable and reliable modern day sage, and so we should believe him. But you don't have to live with it. You don't have to take it and say, okay, now I have to change my life because of it. For the Arizal, we honestly do have to change our lives for, because if we don't, then because he reached such a level of acceptance and authentication that if you don't accept it, it's a bigger problem. So in conclusion, there is no argument between the Hasidic masters and the Ramchal. There is, just like there isn't one from the Ashkenaz masters, and certainly the Gra, who supported him and said he would travel, on foot to learn from him. But there was a level of possible controversy and doubt in his time, which has been clarified now to not be the case. And as far as his unique writings that indicate a revelation similar to the Arizal and a continuation of this idea of Kabbalah and secrets of Torah, like a continuation of the Zohar, that I don't see an issue in accepting. We certainly could accept it as true from him. But bottom line is, it didn't become part of the main focus of Klal Yisrael as to become part of their belief system. And I mean, when you explain to a newcomer to Judaism, which I was at one point, we all are at some point, so you'll explain to him there's obviously the Torah, there's Moshe. Now that comes in two forms. There's the written Torah and the oral Torah. We have to accept both. And then the sages throughout the generations continue to develop this oral Torah and halacha, and also Jewish ideology and Kabbalah. It developed, and they have very important books like the Zohar, which document it all and make it concrete. And you have the Arizal. And then from the Arizal on, here's the big question. And really what this is ultimately connected to is, if we're going to say that there are any arguments between these great rabbis that come after the Arizal, like the Baal Shem Tov, or the Gra, or the Ramchal, or any type of school of thought that has a different approach, all of the different Hasidic masters post the Baal Shem Tov, is this. What is all of Klal Yisrael obligated to accept without any limit or any questions, is up until the Talmud, and again, many include the Zohar, since it's technically before the Talmud. So since it was revealed later, there becomes a question, even with the Zohar itself, but since we accept the authorities that say that it is actually from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Talmidim, so the Zohar becomes like the Talmud, and we have to accept. Up until the Zohar, we have to accept. The Arizal is unique in that he was accepted by everyone. And there is no one that says anything other than Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh on him. And so therefore, rejecting him for what we claim him to be and present him to be in the writings, his writings and his students' writings, would also be considered a major problem. But the Baal Shem Tov, or the Ramchal, or even whatever status that the Gra reached, all of this is debatable in the sense that it's not accepted by all of Klal Yisrael. And so here, we have our traditions, we have our ways, and it would be foolish to say that a Hasidic person has to then stop what he's doing and go and learn the Vilna Gaon, and without it he's not a kosher Jew, or he's not a complete Jew. And vice versa. One would never say that a Sephardi Jew, for example, that has his tradition and his Masorah and his rabbis, has to stop what he's doing to go learn the Ramchal. Otherwise he's something missing from him. And vice versa. We wouldn't say that. But what we would say is that someone who's lacking in the written Torah, the book, actual Torah, or the oral tradition from the Talmud, and the development, obviously, from the rabbis, and the Zohar, and even the Arizal, someone that's missing that is missing something. He's missing something that his soul requires. Very, very important thing to understand, that according to the accepted tradition and the final ruling in halacha, as much as this has a bearing in halacha, someone who's missing a part of the Torah, an official, authentic part of the Torah, his soul ultimately will need to fill that. And that includes pshat, simple meaning of the Torah, remez, all of the allegorical ideas of the Torah, drush, which is expounding and homiletic, and sod, secrets. And so someone that's missing any one of these four categories of Torah ultimately is missing something. And practically this comes out in the Zohar, the Arizal, the Talmud, and the Torah. And so without that, someone is definitely missing an essential aspect of Torah. Beyond that, when we come to the later rabbis and all of their different directions, so anyone that's able to learn more is great. And there are rabbis, for example, today there's an unbelievable rabbi. His potential and his ability to understand Torah is beyond human. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Yitzhak Meir Morgenstern. When you read his writings or you listen to what type of discourse he gives, he knows everything. He's like nothing he doesn't know. But he's unique, meaning he's a unique soul with a unique brain that is able to learn everything. He knows everything from the Gra, from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Ramchal, from Rav Ashlag, from who else can we add? From the Arizal, from the Rashash, from the Torah Chacham, the student of the Rashash. He knows everything. And he accepts, and Rabbi Nachman, he knows everything. And knowing everything, he represents a full, complete Torah, almost to the degree that you can't have more than what he has. But obviously everybody can do that. So to say that we're all obligated to do that, and if we don't, there's something wrong with us, is a problem. Not everyone is built with that type of capabilities, but he, unique in that sense, has learned everything. We have to learn what our teachers teach us. And the basis that our teachers have to learn, ultimately, in a perfect world, is what I mentioned. But today, there is also still a lack in this world because of the galut, because of the pressures of trying to make money, because of the darkness and the powers of the Yetzer Hara. We have a lot of unfortunate things that are working against us, and therefore, even today, there is a part of our Torah that we need, that we're not getting. And let's take a positive message, at least from this entire discussion and the original question of whether there was a machloket between the Baal Shem Tov and the Ramchal, which there isn't. But the message we're going to take out of it is this, that sadly, today, there is a part of our Torah that is almost on a level of forgotten and overlooked. It's partially because it's very hard to get into. It's not easy. And without teachers, it's almost impossible. And that is the secrets of Torah, the Kabbalah of Torah. And again, I mean up until and including the Arizal. Not everybody's on the level that they are obligated to learn it, and not everybody's able to actually qualify to learn it. But it is a part of our soul, and it is a part of our truth. And without it, we are missing something, and that is sad. And if we're not saddened by it, and we're not troubled that we don't have that what we should have, that's a lack in us. That's the lack in us. And ultimately, we'll even extend more. And for us to understand our limitations and say, well, listen, I'm not able to learn now Chassidut. I'm too busy and too involved with what I'm learning. I don't have time to add the learning of Chassidut to my learning schedule. So I'm going to have to go this lifetime without Chassidut. We shouldn't be so happy about that. Why not? The more Torah, the more light. The bigger picture that you can see, the different perspectives you can appreciate. Again, because of our limited ability to do that, so we're exempt from the obligation to. But in a perfect world, of course we would. We would learn everything, like this Rav Morgenstern, if we could. That's what we would do. And I'll conclude with this wonderful, beautiful idea. The Lubavitch Rebbe, who again also had some controversy surrounding him in his lifetime, he gives a very interesting interpretation of a Gemara, piece of Talmud, that says that in the world to come, in the Gan Eden or the real world to come that we're going to be in when Mashiach comes, Tchiat HaMetim, all of the Chachamim are going to be together. Every generation is going to be there. We're all going to have Tchiat HaMetim. We're all going to be there. Again, for English, Tchiat HaMetim means the resurrection of the dead. We're all going to be there. From the smallest Jewish scholar, which is everyone, we're all Jewish scholars on whatever level we've achieved scholarship, to the greatest one. We're all going to be there. And we're going to have different people on our level. We're all going to not share people that have a correlation to our level. All of the Chachamim on this level will all be together. And all of the greatest Chachamim, they'll all be together, and they'll all be able to appreciate and see what each one accomplished. And the sages say that each Chacham is going to be jealous, sort of. His chuppah, which means his standing, his place, his area in the world to come, they call it a chuppah, which means his place, his dwelling in that area of this world to come, meaning his level of knowledge and awareness of truth and God. We're all going to look to someone else, the guy next to us, and it's good. We're going to burn from what we see him have. Now, this is not a negative idea. This is really the idea of being jealous, so to speak, for physical things. That's the worst attribute we can have in us. The worst characteristic trait we can have is to be jealous of people having a nicer car than ourselves, because it's ridiculous. But here, in the world of truth, what we're going to be jealous of is this, and it's a holy, kosher jealousness. It's not a jealousness where I'm jealous of you. at all. We're not going to be jealous of anybody. We're going to see a perspective. We're going to realize that he has a perspective of truth and of God that I don't have, and I'm going to want that. I'm going to look this way, and I'm going to say, wow, you have a perspective that I don't have. Wow, I want to add that. I want to have that in my. I want to incorporate that into my understanding as well, because we're going to want to be as complete as possible. And so we're going to look to what we didn't accomplish and what we don't have in our own Torah knowledge, and we're going to see it in others, and we're going to envy that, so to speak, and then we're going to also want that. We're going to ultimately want it all. And so that's coming full circle. That should be our attitude right now. It should pain us that we cannot learn everything. But we can't. But we have to try, first of all, and it should be paining us. When I hear someone respond, oh, that's Chassidut. I don't learn Chassidut. What kind of attitude is that? This is a holy person. You think he's playing tennis on Sundays? That rabbi that wrote this book? The Baal Shem Tov was playing, the only night you can catch a Hasidic Rebbe playing chess is on Nittelnacht, because they don't learn Torah. They're not allowed. So they use their brain for something else. But otherwise, these rabbis are not playing chess. They're not playing tennis or ping pong. And they're not doing the things we do. So you don't want to learn the teachings of a particular rabbi? Fine. You can't learn everything, and so you're not obligated. But to have an attitude like, no, we don't learn that. We don't learn. What do you mean you don't learn that? It's Torah. It's part of Hashem's wisdom. That's the mistake. That's the tragedy. When we decide that it's not for me or it's not for us. And that's a fallacy. That's wrong. And I'll share with you a personal conversation I had with a tremendous scholar. He wasn't a famous rabbi, but he was a tremendous scholar. We spoke. He understood Talmud, and he had probably finished Talmud at least once, and even knows it well and knows it deep. And we shared ideas back and forth. I can't say that I compare to his level of scholarship of Talmud. I don't even come close. But we shared ideas. I worked to understand the ideas he was sharing. Some of them were from the Vilna Gaon, one of the greatest scholars in the past 500 years. And then I said, very nice. I very enjoyed. We went back and forth in the conversation. Not that I was on his level, but then I said, I want to share with you something that I learned, something that I worked on and I wrote up. And I said it to him. In the end, his response was, that's Kabbalah. I'm not into Kabbalah. So unfortunately, I was like, this is not a reaction that a Talmid Chacham like you should have for a piece of God's Torah. So I felt, look, I got to be honest. If I hold back now, it's not fair. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to the truth of Hashem. So respectfully, I said to him, here's what I want to mention. This is what thought I have right now, and I'm going to share it with you for toilet. I hope some good will come out of it. And please don't be offended if you feel I'm wrong to point this out. I said I want to share with you one observation I had just now. You came and we spoke, and you shared with me all these chidushim and these wonderful ways that you were able to put together ideas from the Talmud. I didn't say at any point that this is not really my style. This one's too deep for me, too complicated, I didn't criticize anything. I was open and tried to learn it because it's Hashem's Torah. So my question to you is this: a sage, a modern day Talmid Chacham, a scholar of your level, you know so much. Why would your reaction to my sharing with you an idea from Kabbalah? It wasn't only Kabbalah, it was based on Talmud and Kabbalah and everything. Why would you just kind of with two hands push it away and say, I'm not into that? It's a part of God's Torah. It's a part of God's wisdom. That's where I think, unfortunately, you're making a mistake. Say that I'm not experiencing it. Say that it's not my area of expertise. But to say with two hands like that it's not for me, that's not true. That's a lie. It is for you. It's for your soul. It's for every soul. And that was the end of it. He accepted what I had to say. And that's it. That I want to conclude this whole discourse with.